Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our original Melanin Stories Matter. I'm Melissa Reaves, and I'm founder of Story Fruition and Melanin Stories Matter. And in this time of this civil unrest that we're seeing, protesting is important, it's vital, but it has come with some concerns and dangers from police violence as well as even the pandemic. But as a storytelling coach and a storyteller, we can take this virtually inside our homes and continue the protest by listening to stories. So this is all in focus of our friends in the BIPOC community, that we need to hear their stories, because stories calm and stories can heal and stories can change the world. And that's why we're here. So we're so grateful that you are taking your time on this embarking moment in our long weekend to join us with this show. You're going to hear a myriad of storytellers from all over the continent. And we have listeners and viewers coming in from all over the world. And that means a lot. Thank you. Now, during this show, you are more than welcome to use the chat feature to make comments. Maybe you want to say, yay, I know Devan. That's great. As the storyteller's giving their story, we do ask that you refrain from chat at that point so that we're not distracting, because it's really important that we're listening fully, giving full attention to our storyteller. But when they're done, oh, please, it's great for you to let them know that they did a great job, because honestly, these 8-minute stories, 6 to 8 minute stories, took weeks of work. These storytellers had to dig deep into their own consciousness and find moments that stood out in their lives that were true and authentic and stood with them and helped them respond and even change as they walk through life with a higher melanin count than some of us. So that's why we're here. So we hope you have a beverage and a snack, and let's get started. Our first storyteller is Cristina Diaz Rivera, and she is coming from Puerto Rico to tell us her story. I was just blown away by the way she taught me that there are many, many shades of melanin within her culture. And so in this story, we are going to call this Caramel Mocha Chocolate Frappuccino. Take it away, Cristina.
Hi. Some context for my story. I'm a writer, a photographer, an army brat, a pastor's kid, and a big sister. I am Latina, which is not my race, but my ethnicity. It is an identifier that connects me to a whole group of people through the history of my language. I am Puerto Rican. I live on an island surrounded by big water. And like many families, I grew up in the bubble that makes us believe that we are Puerto Rican and we can be nothing else. Even if your family, like most families here, have all the colors. Mine is no exception. My dad is chocolate. Mom is cream of wheat. My grandmother was caramel. Her mother was a glass of milk, and abuelo negro, definitely dark chocolate. I guess that makes me a caramel mocha frappuccino. And in spite of the national pride we islanders have and the multi-flavored families we enjoy, there is this saying that goes around: marry light to improve the race. And it's not the only saying like that here, but that one has often come to my mind. Titi Sara, who was a sweet date, broke that rule. She married an 80% dark chocolate man and had 5 caramel chocolate kids. I met them for the first time when I was 17. The gate creaked as they walked up the porch with their rolling suitcases, and our chihuahuas ran to the door, jumping up and down to say hello. And Clotilde, our youngest cousin, she screamed and she ran back out the gate and towards the car. No, 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 no. And we grabbed the dogs and we secured them in the backyard. And as we reassured her, she told us, When I was a little girl walking to school in Washington, D.C., there were neighborhoods we had to run through because our white neighbors would open the doors, unleash their dogs so they would chase us and bite us. And then recently I'm watching TV and Donald Trump, the president, is smiling and waving his tangerine hands, saying, "We'll sick the dogs on them," about protesters in Washington, D.C. And I can't help think, why would you weaponize man's best friend this way? 4 years later, I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm 21 years old, and I'm attending a national youth church conference. There are 35,000 kids there, and out of those 35,000, 2% people of color. During this conference, me and 3 delegates are attending a decision-making assembly. Our sitting assignment is in the back of a large hotel ballroom, and in the front, the kids are arguing back and forth about why they should create intentional positions for people of color on the leadership board. From the back, I see a little girl stand up in the front. She was a 14-year-old cup of strawberry yogurt with curly blonde hair, and without skipping a beat, she said, "What more do these niggers want? We've already given them their freedom." 6 years later, I'm in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in South America. I'm working as an RA for student housing in the dorms, and we have students from all over Argentina. In this community of about 30 people and students I'm working with, I am the only brown person. The phone rings, and there's been an incident at one of the female dorms. E was an icebox cake. Her skin was white like fluffy marshmallows. Her hair was black like Oreo cookies. But there was nothing sweet about what E had done. In a flurry of anger, she stripped down her room. She pulled things off the wall. She dumped her clothes into the suitcase, threw it down a flight of stairs to the first floor. She opened up her purse. She pulled out a condom, spit into it, put creams into it, put in all these gross things, and I don't even want to know. Tied it to the door, slammed it shut, and left. We gathered the 7 remaining housemates in the living room, all students, all women, all white. Everyone took a turn processing out loud what had just happened. And Surai, a kind girl with wheat-colored hair and soft features, she takes a deep breath and says, "I can't believe E would say and do that. That was such a black thing to do." And I said, "Surai, I'm black. My family's black. That is not a black thing to do." And in that moment, I became black. And if I could talk to my 27-year-old self, I would say, thank you for being brave and saying something. We aren't born knowing how to respond to situations like these. We aren't even taught about it in school. But I've learned that when we are silent, we do a disservice to those we represent. And I know Surai wasn't talking directly to me, but the saying mattered. It had a history. And I think back to all the sayings like that I've heard growing up, pointing to light being better. But I refuse to believe that because black is not a bad thing. And the mocha in my Frappuccino is incomplete without the chocolate. These sayings become the stories that are told about people like me. And what we say and where it comes from matters because words have power and they're like spells we cast upon ourselves and others. They become internalized. So as I look back at these stories and all the other stories in between, I hope they tie themselves to your memory and have the power to change the way you experience the different flavors of your own story. Thank you.
Oh, wow. God, that was so good. And Christina Diaz, I know your name, and I apologize for mispronouncing it. I got nervous, I think. I was like, I say her name all the time. We work together. So my apologies. No disrespect meant. That was just brilliant. It's a delicious story. That's my word for that because of the way you use and infuse the food. I have a question. So what would the 40-year-old Christina say to the 14-year-old that said that statement at the youth conference? What would you say to her today?
Oh my goodness. I I I'm not entirely sure because I wasn't in charge at the event, so I didn't, even if I could go back in time, I don't think I could have said anything because it wasn't a child that I was in relationship with. Um,
Well,
but
maybe internally, like, what would be your inner voice like? Because you took that huge sigh, which I thought was very powerful as the storyteller.
but
And
if I did have a relationship, or if I did feel that I could say something, I would I don't know, I would invite her to lunch and say, hey, let's get to know each other a little better. What more do
Mhm,
you want? And why do you think you like, why are you thinking this way? Because that comes from somewhere. And
mhm.
unless we can break bread and talk to each other, we won't know how to make things better.
Yeah. Well, I think at the end, when you say that words are power, and that we cast spells upon the other with them. That's just so powerful. And watching you develop this story has been a joy. And I want to thank you so very much for everything that you've done in these last few weeks.
It's my
All right.
pleasure.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Our next storyteller is coming from Seattle, our hometown here from where I am. And this is Jasmine Wright-Curley. And Jasmine's story is really powerful because she's going to share with us a dream that she had about wanting to be a law enforcement officer and what she learned on the job. And we call this story The Judge Rides Shotgun. Please welcome Jasmine. Your sound?
There we are. So it's a rainy December 13th, 2002. I'm 10 years old and I'm standing in the doorway of the break room at Clark Dental Office, where my mom used to clean every night. And this confusing scene unfolds before me. My mom is crying inconsolably. My dad is sitting at this large white conference table and he just has these heavy, tear-stained eyes. And there's a police officer there, kind of a middle-aged Pacific Islander looking guy, and he's clearly trying to console my parents. Well, it turns out my big brother, Gene, who was 18 years old at the time, had been killed in a car accident. Officer Batista was the state trooper who responded to my brother's accident. And that night, he pulls my mom and dad aside and he says from the bottom of his heart, "From what I've heard and seen here tonight, I believe your son went home to be with the Lord." Maybe it was the Jesus sticker on my brother's car, or maybe it was just something he felt compelled to tell them. But either way, that really stuck with my parents, especially my mom. So now I'm 26 years old. I've had some success as a performing artist and a dance teacher, but I'm, unfulfilled. I kind of want to give more of my skills. I want a stable career. And I start noticing the racial tension situated around law enforcement and also the push for women to get into the job. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting at my parents' kitchen counter, and after going to college, performing for Disney, teaching dance to kids, being on television, being engaged, I say to my mom, "I think I'd make a good police officer." I'm sure her heart dropped. But my mom, she's never discouraged me, even when I do stuff that scares the crap out of her. Instead, she fumbles through her kitchen cabinet, And she hands me this old tattered card for Officer Batista. And she says, maybe he can give you advice. So I reach out to him, not really knowing what to say. Find out he's a police chief now, and he actually remembered our family 17 years later. He gives me advice on the hiring process, and I just knew I wanted to be there for someone in their worst time like he was there for our family. So I ended up graduating from the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission with flying colors. And little did I realize, of course, the academy was the easy part. So now I'm in my field training. I'm on the road, and it's real life. It's been a few months of learning on the job with different trainers, and now I'm in my midterm evaluation week. So I'm nervous. Like there's a lot happening in a police vehicle. There's a keyboard and computer screen to your right that you work on. There's a screen up here that operates your dashboard video camera. There's a radio that's just constantly chirping off calls for service and all the details. There's a light bar down below where you operate your lights, your sirens, and your PA system. And you just operate all these bells and whistles like while you drive. It's no big deal. And then to top it all off, sitting in the passenger seat is my midterm evaluator. And she is this tall, blonde female officer. And she just towered over me. And she was very nice and professional, but just intimidating and critical. She was the judge. So toward the end of the shift, one of the nights around 3 a.m., this call comes out. Officer 167, a home invasion and assault. And then they wait for you to answer. So I'm just like, Officer 167, go ahead. Reporting party says that her friend's ex-boyfriend broke into their house and bludgeoned the friend's new boyfriend with a metal candlestick, and then fled the location in an older Ford pickup truck heading eastbound. Address is blah, blah, blah. And they rattle this off like an auctioneer, right? So I go to my computer to pull up the digital map. And the judge stops me. And she says, you know, it makes me really uncomfortable when you're trying to drive and look at your computer at the same time. I'd rather you just pull over, find out where you need to go on your paper map, and then just drive. And so I said to her, yes, ma'am. And I did it. So I pull out my paper map, which is about this big, and I'm looking for the house. Okay. 2 minutes goes by. Don't see it, but it's going to pop up here soon because I'm doing the grid thingy and someone needs help right now, so it's kind of important. 5 minutes goes by. Might as well have been 5 hours because I can't find this house. Like it is in the twilight zone somewhere. So I'm starting to sweat, right? Other officers are chiming in on the radio saying that they've stopped the suspect a few miles away. They're calling out their numeric call signs. They're giving updates, asking me questions. Dispatch radios me and asks if anyone's made contact with the victim yet, which is what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm still pulled over and lost. Great. Meanwhile, my midterm evaluator, the judge, she's just sitting there cool as a cat, watching me. And I'm just juggling, right? I'm trying to like answer dispatch, listen to what's happening with the suspect, read my map, but also like keep my head on a swivel because it's graveyard shift and cops who sit in their cars have been ambushed. What sucks is that I was working for a department who a couple years ago had 4 of their officers shot and killed while they were sitting in a coffee shop working on their laptops. And that's a reality check. So finally, I point to a spot on the map and I ask the judge, is this kind of the general vicinity? And she takes a long sip from her venti coffee. And she says, I don't know. Which is key word for yes, she does know, but she's not supposed to be helping me because I'm a rookie and I gotta learn, right? Unless it's like life or death. Then dispatch airs that the suspect has blood on his hands and the victim has a pretty bad head injury. So I put my map away, I activate my lights and sirens, and I go. And when I get in the area, I tell the judge one more time, look, I still don't know where the exact house is. Like, I don't want to screw this up. Can you help me? Since we were dealing with an injury, she stops playing coy, gives me exact directions to the house, which I still drive past and have to turn around for. And all I can think is, oh my God, we're going to have a talk about this later, and it's not going to be good. So the scene itself is overwhelming. Of course, the guy's bleeding from his head, losing consciousness. We have to get medics there. We also have to get information from him before he passes out. We have to collect evidence that has blood on it, take photos, get witness statements and testimonies, get medical releases, blah. A month later, I find myself in a repeat evaluation with, you guessed it, the judge. Except this time I have a heart-to-heart talk with her at the end of our shift. And it was nice because she took off her judge hat and she put on her human hat. And we talked about where my head was. After reflecting on just my stress level, my anxiety over the past couple months, my personality change, I'd made the decision to resign. And that sucked because it was really hard to get in. I put a lot of work into it. And I joined the police to make something of myself, to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the public. I may not have been great at multitasking, but man, I was great at writing reports. And I was great at talking to people, whether they were victims or suspects. So now all I can think is, well, I'm less stressed now that I quit. But was that the right decision? Did I just walk away from a great career? And then last month, it came out on the news that a Bothell police officer had been killed while conducting a traffic stop. And when they released the name, I realized I had gone to the academy with him. He was 26 years old, still on his field training. And that could have been me. It's hard being a cop, and it makes me appreciate people even more, like Officer Batista, who can just do it with grace and dignity. And I just kind of think maybe God allowed me to be a light in the forest for a brief time, to walk a path that no one chooses, to increase my appreciation. And I'm starting to think maybe he took me out because he knew my mom couldn't bear to lose another child. And I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Great work.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Oh my God. God, I was in that car with you. I could just see the chaos and the anxiety that you were going through. You just captured it. And I saw her. I could see the judge and that coffee sip. And oh my goodness. So thank you and congratulations on such a wonderful story delivery. I do have a question. So with all that's going on now and you're watching all of this along with us out on the TV screens, what's your take? You know, how do you feel inside when you see this, like even the Seattle recent protests and how it went down with the police?
For me, it's heartbreaking on both ends because I'm Black, you know. Mm-hmm. We've had racism experiences in our family too. But on the other side, I had a lot of friends in the academy who were working for Seattle police, and I remember working with all of them, and they were all these bright-eyed, bushy-tailed new officers, and I listened to all of their stories the first day of the academy, and everyone was there for a very personal reason. And I knew, and everyone was there for the right reasons. And those are the kind of cops that we want out there, you know. So when I see stuff on the news, oftentimes, you know, that's not every cop. And it kind of sucks because we do get lumped into what one cop does, you know, or a few cops. But yeah, just knowing that my friends are out there and they're trying their best to do what they learned, I mean, that's hard. And I do feel like maybe God it was kind of a blessing in disguise that I left, because I left right before kind of this whole thing blew up with George Floyd. And I gotta say, it would be really hard out there right now to be working in the streets.
Well, you know, things happen in life for reasons, right? And that's a big thing that you did, right? And so maybe, you know, maybe it will make sense later. Maybe you're still writing this story.
I mean, my peace officer certification is good for 5 years, so I could always go back. We'll see.
And maybe in a role that makes you feel
Right.
like it's matching you more because, yeah, we
Right.
do need people like you. So
Yeah.
thank you. And you can see in the chat, everyone, that we have the Coalition of Black Women to be supported by for our storyteller here. And Jasmine, you just have been a delight to work with. You beautiful story. So thank you.
Thank you.
You can go relax now. Okay, our next storyteller is coming from Los Angeles, and this is Stephanie B. And Stephanie and I met in a networking event and just hit it off. The next thing you know, we started talking about a potential story for her, and we actually had found a different story. But Stephanie kept digging and digging inside her psyche and her consciousness, and this next story came up. And while sitting in a salon chair, she had a major epiphany about her hair. And we call this story Liberated. Please welcome Stephanie B.
It's 2020. I'm 40 years old, and I'm sitting in the salon chair. I reach down for my phone and see a message from my good friend Nina, who had just sent me a picture of me when my hair was permed. And it reminded me of how far I had come. I grew up in Maryland in a well-off neighborhood with a middle-class family where playtime and ice cream trucks are the highlight of my day. I'm oblivious to a world where I'm hated because of the color of my skin, where police brutality and murder of innocent Black men and women is the norm, and where hairstyles influence social and economic status. My parents are well-respected medical professionals, where politics and status are measured by the illusion of perception, and where playing dress up in fancy dresses, attending etiquette classes, and frequent hair appointments to maintain my coarse hair is the trend. Now, my hair appointments are organized around humidity forecasts, pool parties, and extracurricular activities in fear of my hair looking too poofy. I felt ugly on most days and beautiful on the days when my hair was outwardly expressed as a silky, European-looking full head of hair. For generations, we straightened our hair. And so for me at the time, it just felt normal. I'm 8 years old when I experienced my first press and curl. I can smell the metal from the hot comb that permeates the air. See my mom prop the stool down next to the kitchen stove. Hear the sizzle of the comb as it grazes my coarse hairline as I squirm and pull away to prevent the comb from scorching my neck. The result, 5 hours later, is a silky full head of hair with long, beautiful curls. Now, between the washing and the blow drying and the straightening and the curling, my hair, this was an all-day event. And it was brutal. But to fit in, somehow it felt worth it. Now, just before bed, I'd grab a silk scarf from my dresser drawer, run the teeth of a wide tooth comb through my hair in a circular motion, bobby pinning loose ends in place before carefully tying it down. As soon as I get into bed, I fall asleep with my head cupped in the palm of my hand, head nodding to and fro throughout the night to prevent my curls from falling. The term for this is called sleeping pretty. Now, sleeping pretty had its advantages, but it certainly had its disadvantages. I often woke up groggy in the mornings, but my hair was cute. It was exhausting, to say the least. So it was no surprise when my mom introduced me to a more permanent hair application, something we like to call creamy crack. Now, everybody knows that once you go creamy crack, there's no going back. And I was too excited. So here I am, 10 years old, legs swinging from the salon chair, flipping through and dog-earing the pages of the latest and greatest hairstyling books. I think I dog-eared at least enough styles for an entire year. Now, Pam, my stylist, who was fashionably running late, comes running in the door, apologizing as usual. She quickly grabs a towel and cape, wrapping them around my neck, snapping them in place. She then parts my hair and greases my scalp. "This is the day," I said. Pam smiles and says, "You're excited?" I replied, "I sure am." As Pam began to apply the white creamy substance to my virgin hair, I began to think of all the pool parties and the sporting events I avoided growing up, and the fact that I would never feel ugly again. As Pam was finishing up the final touches, she spun my chair around towards the mirror so I could gaze upon my new look. Y'all, I couldn't grin any harder if I tried. Never mind that my scalp was burned from the perm. My hair was fried, dyed, and laid to the side. Honey, I was fine. Now, over the course of my life, I used to use a variety of hair straightening techniques, including press and curl, perms, hair straighteners, and weaves. And over the course of that time, I always felt like I was trying to fit in. Now, with the past and present day events, I became insanely curious about culture and my history, and I found myself eagerly searching for answers. What I found was that I am magic. My hair is magic. So why am I trying to wash me away? So here I am in my room watching a YouTube video my mom sent me on the history of African hair. African hairstyles are an expression of beauty, spiritual devotion, social status, and during slavery was used as our guide to freedom. Before marriage, Igbo girls in present-day Nigeria used clay, ground coil, and palm oil to shape their hair into horn that shapes towards their brows. In Kenya, young men would spend hours getting their hair elaborately styled to demonstrate completion of initiation rites for adulthood. Now, when we were taken into slavery by the Europeans in 1444, our hair was cut, and speaking our language was forbidden. This was done to break down our foundation of power, which is built in culture. When our hair started to grow back, we began to communicate again through a style called cane rows or corn rows, relaying messages of escape to freedom. Now, when slavery ended, to prevent us from growing in power as a community, our oppressors created a new form of oppression, deeming Afro-textured hair unprofessional, unattractive, and unclean. To survive economically, we found ways to fit in through hair straightening tools, chemically based products, and weaves, just as I did, and my mom did, and her mom did before. Now, this type of oppression is still being used to this day. However, what I found is that the issue isn't so much about straightening my hair, but my why for straightening my hair to begin with. I was perplexed with what I had learned, and honestly, I was a bit angry, which was noticeably apparent after a family trip I took a couple years ago. So here I am, 38 years old in the Caribbean with my family. I just stepped off the elevator. I'm walking through the self-opening double doors, and I see 3 little white girls sitting in vendor chairs getting their hair cornrowed. Immediately, I felt rage. I thought, just pull a little harder. How dare you take on a culture you tried to destroy? And then suddenly I hear my loctician say, "Steph, go ahead and lean back into the bowl." Still upset, I lean my head back as my loctician turned the water on, and then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I have unknowingly been programmed to hate myself, to hate my own. I began to think of my own history with hair straighteners, but mainly my why. I realized that I started my sister lock journey 3 years ago because I wanted a deeper relationship with myself. How ironic that this story writing journey would lead me to this spiritual awakening. To know the past is to know the present, and to know the present is to know myself. And only then can I recreate a new story, one of liberation and of love for my own culture. Thank you.
Wow, a lot goes on in the head when you have chance to reflect. That your hair looks beautiful. Now, you said that it's become a spiritual journey, and I think that's really important and really interesting. What's one of the insights that as you started to see your hair really go natural and be who you are? What was a moment where did you get scared? Were you
I
excited?
think
Like what happened?
Going natural is a journey. There are moments of fear, and it's up and down. It depends on, am I going for a job interview? Is this person going to accept me because my hair is natural and it's in a style where a lot of people say, oh, your hair is so pretty, because you're not used to the natural state that we're supposed to be in, because we've been culturally assimilated to look the way that we look. So I different it's an emotional roller coaster, I would say.
Well, I'd like to go natural, but I won't do it yet. So I commend you. Stephanie, your story is amazing. And The Color of Change, which I thought was a really great choice on your charity, is an organization that you would appreciate any giving to. And you can check out Stephanie online in her Instagrams. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. So I hope everyone's enjoying what's going on in this evening. I certainly am. I've heard these stories a few times now, and they still just give me goosebumps. Our next storyteller is Harjas Singh, and he is coming from New York. Now, he came from the Seattle story scene, and then he just picked up and left, and he was taking it by storm. But I'm so glad that we have the virtual world, because we can still have Harjas available. He's a wonderful storyteller. And this is a story that coming to America post 9/11, what it might be like as a Sikh man. So we are going to call this story Pulling Back the Turban. Please welcome Harjas.
I'm 5 years old. My mom dresses me up nicely in my school uniform. I'm wearing my navy blue shorts, light blue shirt and tie. She combs my hair, ties it in a bun, and covers it with a turban. Not quite like the turban I wear today, but almost like a do-rag that makes the outline of my bun, my juda, visible. My grandfather drops me off at the bus stop, and right after he leaves, the boys at the stop surround me, hold my juda in their hands, and try and rip it apart like it's a dirty old rag. Is that a tomato on your head? Is that an egg? What if I smash it? Will it break? And this would happen day after day. And every day I would come back home and cry to my mom and ask her, why do I look different? Why can't I be normal like everyone else? And my mom would say, Beta, we are Sikhs. The turban is a part of our identity. Our long, uncut hair is a part of our identity. It represents existing in the natural form that God created us in. It is a gift given to us by our gurus. And who are you to try and blend in when you were born to stand out? There were two more things my mom told me that day that gave me strength and comfort in who I was. One, if you're better at something than everyone else, everyone will want to learn from you and not hurt you. And two, always fight for your right, but know that you can't change everyone. So for those who are willing to learn, educate them about your faith with love and compassion. So that's what I did. I started standing up for myself when I needed and started studying as hard as I could. To my surprise, the same people who used to pull my hair and turban at the bus stop would now come to me asking for help with their homework. This defense mechanism of working hard to protect myself compounded over the next 12 years and had a nice side effect that led me to getting admitted in a top 5 computer science program in America. And I was as American as I could be while still being Indian. I could quote friends at the drop of a hat. I'd heard enough Backstreet Boys to give anyone a run for their money, and I was ready for America to beam me up, Scotty. A brand new start. A place where I can be accepted for who I am, just like Lady Liberty says. I was going to school in Philly, and by that first night, everyone was talking about the first parties of the year on 35th and Powelton. And my experience of American parties was shaped strongly by my multiple viewings of American Pie. I dressed up looking my fashionable best. I combed and oiled my beard, put on my nicest looking turban, and showed up at the townhouse overflowing with freshmen with red solo cups in their hands, just like American Pie. But as someone who doesn't drink, it didn't take me long to realize that house parties were just not my scene. So as I tried to leave and from the crowded entryway, a girl stopped me and said, "Can I ask you a question?" Me? Yes. "Are you a terrorist?" She said it so unironically that I just stood there dumbstruck for a second. Like Christina said, we are not taught how to react in situations like these. She was genuinely asking me out of curiosity, "Are you a terrorist?" And this assault on my identity continued in subtle but mostly not so subtle ways. Every so often, a car would drive by and the driver would shout, "Fuck you, Osama," or "Goddamn raghead." One time, I was stopped at the airport because TSA thought that the jar of pickles I was carrying was an improvised explosive device. And then there was this time when I was waiting for the next bus when a red Jeep slows down near me, the back window rolls down, and the person inside throws a crumpled cigarette box at me and drives away. I stood there shaking because it felt like I couldn't be safe anywhere. A year later, on August 5th, 2012, the Sikh community of Oak Creek, Wisconsin had gathered together at the Gurdwara for their weekly prayers, just like Sunday church. The prayer was to be followed by langar, the community kitchen where everyone, regardless of religion, gender, sexual orientation, is welcome to a free meal, when Wade Michael Page, an ex-Army veteran, walked into the temple with a legally purchased 9mm semi-automatic pistol and opened fire on the men, women, and children gathered there. He killed 6 people before shooting himself. It was later revealed that he was a white supremacist and often talked about an impending racial holy war. The media insisted that his motives remained unclear and that the mystery had died with him, but ask any Sikh or Muslim and the motive seems obvious. So maybe it is true. We can't be safe anywhere. The question then is, if I feel so unsafe in America, what has kept me here for 9 years? Why continue to stay? It's because despite its imperfections, America, like all of us, is a work in progress. It is also the kind of country that gives people like us opportunity. You know how they say you cannot be what you cannot see? I don't have to look too much further than my own family to see the results of the opportunity America provides in the form of my 2 uncles who came here before me, built successful companies, and live beautiful lives with their families. Yes, there is the occasional verbal abuse. Fortunately, no physical abuse. But I get through it because I realize that it's only 0.5% of the people doing the shouting. The other 99.5% are on my side. And look, given the state of the world today, maybe I'm too optimistic or maybe I'm too naive to think that the 99.5% are with me. But I'd rather believe and live in an America that I know is on my side and than be in one that is overrun by bigots and assholes. And like my mom said, you can't change everyone, but for those who are willing to learn, educate them with love and compassion. And hey, I'm more than happy to talk because when you look like I do, it's a great conversation starter.
So much warmth. I mean, the second you meet Harjas, you just feel his heart. You are just a stunning person. And your mother oftentimes comes up in your stories. Mine comes up in mine too. And she's just sounds like a gem.
She is.
Yeah. So much wisdom in scenes that you've had with your mother in other stories too. So you say something that when the bullies now at the bus stop are now trying to hire you to be their tutor, and you would give them a bonus lesson in Sikhism. What would be one of the things that you may have said to them, and how did they react?
Yeah. I mean, Sikhism it's predominantly it started in India, and the large population of Sikhs still remain in India. It's by the numbers, it's the fifth largest religion in the world, but people don't really realize that. And Sikhism has always preached equality for all, men, women, everyone. And so, when you're called out for being different, it's almost like it doesn't compute in your head, because that's not what the religion is teaching you. So yeah, I guess that equality.
Well, that is a very important value that we all need. So I think your story was fabulous, and thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa.
All right. And please, you can also see in the chat that the state coalition is an organization that he'd be most grateful for if you would be generous to provide some funding and donations. So thank you. All right, you can go relax. All right, so we have two more storytellers to hear. And our next storyteller is coming from Brooklyn. And Devan and I met, just a few weeks ago. We were actually in a show together, and his story it blew me away. And in this story, it's amazing what can happen in a split decision when the fork in the road is something that you have to decide upon. And this story is called The Price of Perspective. Please welcome Devan Sandiford.
Thanks, Melissa. It's 2013. I'm 28 years old, and I'm driving down this narrow path out in the countryside of Virginia. I'm headed to get some high-end furniture from the most extraordinary source that I know. Craigslist, of course. It's 2013. I'm in my 20s, and so buying furniture from strangers is like a God-ordained social right. And it's one that I've exercised over and over. I got my son his toddler bed off the internet, and that was $175 for a $400 bed. I got him a train table for $75. It came complete with Thomas and Friends trains. And I had even driven all the way out about an hour away from my house to get a IKEA sofa that was still within the original packaging, and the people just thought they couldn't return it because they lost the receipt. So when I got it for half off, I was like, Craigslist is everything that I need. And today I'm really excited because I'm going to have an even better deal. My wife has found this great Ethan Allen chair, which retails for about $900, and I'm going to be buying it for $50. And so I'm really excited to be going out and picking up this chair, except I've never been this far out in Virginia before. And I'm not actually from Virginia. I'm not from the East Coast at all. I was born and raised in Southern California. And so driving down this country road makes me feel like I've been like transported back in time and like dropped into a scene of Little House on the Prairie. There's like old barns, these red barns that look like they could be blown over by the wind. There's little creeks, and the houses out here are so spread apart, I don't think you can consider these people neighbors at all. And so I'm a little worried that I could get lost. Some of these streets don't even have names. I've been off the highway for a long time, and I haven't seen any gas stations or people. And the worst thing is that even though it's 2013 and I'm 28 and I have a really good paying job, I actually don't have a smartphone. And so I've printed out the directions. I just have my dumb phone. And I always just thought that I was just kind of too cool for a smartphone. And on top of that, like I have a really old soul and I don't want to be distracted with like all these new notifications and pop-up things here and there. So I really loved my old dumb phone, and I haven't had any problems until now. I'm coming across these streets that don't have any names, and I come to a fork in the road, and to the right, there's this dirt path that seems to lead up a hill, and I can't really see too far down. And to the left, there's this like rocky path that's like made of like these pebbles. And I'm like, that's a strange path. And I try and decide which one is the path I'm supposed to go on. And the path to the left with the pebbles seems a little bit more straight. So I decide I'll go down this path. And I drive down the path. And as soon as I get on top of these little pebbles, I hear them clanging together under my car. And I think to myself, that was a bad idea. Because I'm in this 2007 old Toyota Yaris manual transmission. It's undeniably a college person's car. And now I'm worried that I'm going to get stuck on these rocks. But I'm already committed to this path, so I continue to drive down. And a little while later, I see a first house. And I'm like, I know this isn't the house because I still need to make a few turns. So I keep on driving. And just a short while later, I see a second house. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like the houses here aren't spread apart. And at that second house, I see it's actually a dead end. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is probably somebody's like driveway of sorts. And I have to like figure out if I can turn around quick, and it doesn't work. And I have to do a 3-point turn. And as I go to do the 3-point turn, I see this man in a trucker hat, a white shirt, and jeans walking out of his house and walking towards the path that I have to go back along. And I know exactly what he's doing. He's walking over there and he's going to cut me off and he's going to stop me. And this is where I get really afraid, because ever since moving to the East Coast, I have seen really horrifying things for me. I've seen trucks with Confederate flags on them. I've seen trucks with decorative nooses hanging from them. And the worst thing that I've seen is this house that has a Confederate flag that covers the entire garage door. And every time I pass that house, I think to myself, what would I do if people came out of this house with torches and they blocked my path? And I run this scenario in my head so I can be prepared. And I think the first thing I'll do is I'll just turn around and I'll get out of there. I'll find another way home. The second thing I'll do is I'll get my phone and I'll call for help or let somebody know where I'm at. And the third thing I'll do, if I can't do those two things, I'll just like zoom past them or like drive towards them until they get so scared that they have to move out of the way, and I'll get out that way. And all this is running through my head as I see the man getting closer and closer to the street. And I think to myself, I can't go back the other way because it's a dead end. So that's out. And I look down at my dumb phone and I realize I'm way out in the countryside and I have no service. And even if I did, I'm 3 hours away from my home. So there's nobody I could call to help me anyway. And so I know I only have one option. I just have to like zoom past this man. This $50 Craigslist chair is just not going to be worth me having to face this man and not knowing what's going to happen. And so that's the plan I'm going to go for. And as I put my car into gear and get ready to punch the gas, I think to myself for a second and I stop and I'm like, and I usually try and be pretty smart about the dumb decisions I make. But on that day, I decided against my better judgment that I would stop where the man was. And I rolled down my window and he came up next to me and he looked down at me and he asked me, "What you doing all the way out here?" And as soon as his accent comes in, I feel my heart beating even faster. And I just want to, again, go back to my original plan and zoom off. But I try and tell him what I was doing, that I was just there to buy a chair off Craigslist and that I had this dumb phone and I printed out directions and I thought it was up there at the fork that I was supposed to go left, and I hope that he turns away so that I can breathe. But he doesn't turn away. He just keeps looking at me. He's like, "I knew you were going to come down this way and turn around because there's a dead end right there. So I decided I was going to come out and meet you on the street." And I'm like, "Please just let me get through this. I don't need this $50 chair." And then he asked me for a pen and I'm like, what is he going to do? Is he going to stab me with this pen? And he's like, "No, actually, can you hand me that paper? I'll write down the directions for you." And he jots down some directions. He talks about a barn that's up the way, a tree that's leaning sideways to look out for before I turn. And he's a genuinely nice man. And as he gives me back the directions, I feel a little guilty that I had judged him. But I don't think that he knew that I judged him. And also nobody got hurt. So I'd say thank you and I just drive off. And I do all the turns that he said, go back along where the fork was and follow it. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, I'm at the house and I'm picking up this chair from Craigslist, which turns out that it's too big for my dumb college car. And I have to jam it into the trunk. And I asked them for a rope and I have to tie it around. And now I'm really frustrated. And I get it as tight as I can. And I hope that it stays. And as I'm driving back along, I hit this fork in the road from the opposite side. And as soon as I hit the fork from the opposite side, everything is completely clear. And I realized that I've been holding on to this old dumb phone. And I realized that I've been holding on to this old dumb college car. And I realized that I've been holding on to these old dumb beliefs. And even though I hadn't done anything to the man physically and he may not have known that I judged him, anytime that another human being sees someone who's a human and thinks less of them, it's a big deal. And I know that from the other side of this coin because I've been viewed as a threat so many times in my life. And I feel really bad that this lives inside of me. And while I could get rid of my dumb phone and just upgrade to a smartphone, I could sell my old car. This old belief is something that's lived with me my whole life. And I long for the day that I can give up this dumb belief and that we can all give up these beliefs about race and live a better life. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think we all are seeing that more about this dumb belief and these impressions that we make on other people so quickly. So, Devan, some of your storytelling magic is you are so wonderful at sharing the vulnerability of your inner monologue. You know, my heart was palpitating, and I've heard this story before, but each time you do it, I'm like, oh my, yeah, okay. And the fact that you had the three-prong ideas, you know, of how you were going to get around this guy that you were sure was going to harm you, and justifiably why you would have that belief in you.
Thank you.
It's just very powerful. And I love also your play on the words with the dumb, you know, my dumb phone, and I like to be smart when I make dumb decisions. The phone became a character, so the chair in your story. So just great image painting as far as being a storyteller, and you're just a delight. So first question I have is, do you still have that chair?
No, got rid of that chair when I left Maryland, me and my family, when we left. We didn't bring that chair with us.
Yeah, it sounded like a good deal. But I want to give a second because you are a storytelling producer as well with Unreeling Storytelling. And I attended your show, it was last week, right?
Yeah, it feels like it was forever ago, but I think it was just last week.
I know it does feel like, but it was amazing. I mean, your storytellers were fantastic. You want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, Unreeling Storytelling, we got started, me and my partner, back in February. We had been talking about things that we wanted to do for our community, and both him and I had a lot of repressed stories, of police brutality from our past and within our families that we've been holding on to and not really talking about. So we wanted to create a space where we could open up and share those stories, especially within our community, and encourage other people within our community to do the same.
So we're on the same path, but just different melanin levels, if you will. So I'm so grateful that you could join our show and share that story. The Garner Way Foundation is an organization that is dear to your heart.
Yeah,
Yes.
actually, my partner, Jason Fulford, he is Eric Garner's cousin, and so anytime we do a show or we fundraise, we raise for them. It's very personal. So
Okay, well, thank you. You did a great job. Beautiful story, and I look forward to hearing more from you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So our final storyteller for the evening is also, well, originated in Great Britain and is now here in Seattle. And Abby Ebenezer just is a force to be reckoned with. She's got so much positive and loving energy. And in this one, she's a filmmaker, she's an actor, and she's also very much so an activist. And in her story, we call this, Are We at War?
It's 9/11, and I've just canceled breakfast with a best friend, Greg, who went to work on the 97th floor at the World Trade Center because I had a surprise quiz at uni. I'm in the train station in New York, and I'm on my way to New Jersey from my overnight job, and it's 7:30 a.m., and I finally get to school. I finished taking my economics test, and I turn on my mobile only to receive 30 missed calls from friends telling me that the World Trade Center was just attacked. Well, that doesn't make sense because I was just there. So I run down to the student center to see the news show on the screen over and over again. 3 months later, after searching for Greg, we found out that we finally found his remains and were able to bury him. In June of the following year, I joined the Navy because I want to make sure that 9/11 never happens again. I am a veteran. I served 2 tours in Djibouti and Afghanistan in 2007 I'm in Navy boot camp when they tear gas us. They teach us this to make sure that if we ever go on deployment, we know exactly how to handle those type of situations. This only happened to me once while I was active duty. On May 25th, 2020, I am watching a death blue knee pressing upon a begging black neck. This causes a deep outroar within myself and the rest of the world. This has not only happened once, but so many other times to so many other people of color, especially right here in our own state. May 30th, 2020, I'm in Westlake, Seattle with my friends. One of them is Lucio. I call him my bear because he's 6'3" and a Spaniard, and he is there to protect us. He came there to also show his support along with the rest of my friends. He met up with us, and we all chant together the names of so many of those that have been lost due to police brutality over and over again. Rodney King, Charlena Lyles, Aubrey Abrams, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and recently, Jacob Blake, who is now paralyzed for the rest of his life. So many different chants we say to show that we come in peace. Unfortunately, we're met with forceful opposition. The Seattle Police Department threw flashbangs, tear gas, and rubber bullets directly into our crowd. Why? Because they couldn't separate us from the blonde woman that decided to set a police car on fire with hairspray and a lighter. My friend Britannia is a saint. She already has this water and baking soda solution ready to go for those who've been affected by the tear gas. I myself got a mouthful of it, and I hear the bangs go over my head. Suddenly, I'm back in Afghanistan. I've got my Kevlar on. I'm watching my commander run around over and over again, telling us that we're all going to die. And I think, I'm not there. I'm in Seattle. I'm home. I'm home. I have friends that I need to protect and take care of. And I snap out of it. I try to breathe whilst moving through all of the tear gas, trying to make sure that I reach my friends to let them know that we will meet up with them again because they are all protest virgins within themselves. We want to continue the fight, Britannia and I. So I say to my friends, stay here while Britannia and I go to the front lines. I'm still reeling from the previous bout of tear gas as we trek forward to look at these individuals who kept treating us like the enemy. Why aren't you protecting us? I tried looking into their eyes. I tried looking at their faces, but they're all completely covered in riot gear. Cowards. They threw tear gas at us again, and we have to fall back to meet up with the rest of our friends. I look at my phone and I just receive a text message from Lucio saying that whilst he was protecting people in the front line, he was maced directly in the face. He has to go home. It's 5:13 when I look at my watch, and apparently we got a text message saying that there was a curfew in place. Mayor Durkin, who allowed us to protest in the first place, decided to turn tail. We've been sent to our rooms. I feel so sad and betrayed. It's June 6, 2020, and I am facing another protest. I've actually accumulated more protest virgins for my very own Greek tragedy. Am I going to war? Yes, I am. Peacefulness, of course, at first. And then we charge in. I look into the crowd and all I see are armored guards. We push on. They retreat and we finally establish the Chaz. Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. But the residents actually didn't want to call it that. So we opted for the CHOP, Capitol Hill Occupied Protest Zone. This place, it's so beautiful and peaceful. We do different events almost every single day. One of the events that I got to participate in was called a blackout. It's when our white allies blockaded the front gates at Cal Anderson Park only to allow people of color to enter. This was a place that we all got to laugh, to talk, to hang out, to breathe. We're making history. We finally are making change. And that's why I protest. Thank you.
Did it again. Okay, hang on.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. This is what happens. This happened a few times when we were working on this story. And thank you. Thank you for your bravery and your service to this country and your bravery to this movement. You are amazing. All your friends, your Greek chorus. So that moment, the last moment where you're talking about when you were in Chaz and you said it was the white people were letting you in. How did your heart feel when you saw that?
It was definitely a weird experience, honestly. I don't think I've ever in my entire life been in a space like that since I've lived here. Also, having I actually described a moment to a friend of mine that I was walking in downtown Seattle and I felt free. I felt safe, which is really weird, right? Because my son and I, he's 19 years old, and I always worry about him every single day, and the time that the Chaz was established, or the CHOP was established, I always wanted it to just be a place where he could go to and just, relax, right? And I would always wish that the rest of the world was like that, but unfortunately, that's not what we live in right now. So, yeah.
Well, maybe Seattle can be one of the starters, right? Like that we can work together and create this unity that you've done and you've worked so hard and so bravely. Thank you. I mean, it's just amazing. And having worked with you now for a few weeks, it's just been, like I said, a delight. You can see here in the chat that we have the Green Light Project that is near and dear. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Green Light Project is based out here in Seattle. It's a nonprofit organization. And what it does is it takes care of those women who have been in domestic violence situation. It also helps to do everything that they possibly can to, help any type of person who's been in any kind of been attacked or involved in any kind of violent situation. And what they do is they literally have people, sponsors, money that constantly comes in, and they rehouse these victims as quickly as possible. Everyone is always on like an email or a text message chain, and they're literally doing everything that they can to protect the people that live right here in Seattle. So,
yeah. Good. Awesome. Well, hang tight. You did a great job. You can go take a deep breath and celebrate because you did so well. Your story. All right. So that was our final storyteller for this evening and for this show. And I just want to first off just thank all of them. I have done that, but I just am so grateful. And I hope that each story can change a person's heart, because they can calm and they can heal. Story Fruition is my company, and I do teach storytelling, but I really want to thank Dr. Brianna Grantham, who runs BJG Consulting, and she's my marketing guru, and she has been literally flying planes in the background here tonight. She has been running technology and all the marketing, and Brianna, you're just genius, along with Christina Diaz. You are awesome and just a fabulous pair. And then our friends over at Fluency Speak. So when we're doing our storytelling, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into this, and Fluency Speak is this platform that we use to go in and have a private virtual rehearsal room so that they can go in, they can practice, I get pinged, we can go back and forth. And this technology has just been a game changer. So Owen Walton and Heidi Schumann, thank you so much for being such a wonderful sponsor and partner. And a shout out also to Quincy Emerson, who has been really helpful in our design of our logo as well as our deck. And I also want to thank NPR and KNKX here in Seattle, along with Fresh Ground Stories, because they have been very supportive of the work that we're doing here for Melanin Stories Matter. And some of our storytellers are actually going to be on their show next week on 9/11, and it's entitled Pandemics and Protests, and it's going to be really fantastic. So I hope that you can join and hear their show as well. We are planning more, and we are going to be looking for storytellers. So our next show plan is the theme, Your Vote Matters, because one thing that we have as our best weapon is our vote, and to get out there and vote. And so we'll be looking for stories that inspire you as politically, like why? Like, were you or are you or know someone who's maybe a professional football player and went down on his knee? Did they get reprimanded for it? What was that like? Were you in the room when our president was tossing paper towels at you after a hurricane? Would that change your vote? Were you someone that realized that you can vote with your money, and you can decide who you're going to support in your own consumerism? These are stories that we're looking for. And so if you can go to our website and just check out Tell Your Story, we'll get pinged. And we are actively looking for stories as well as underwriters. So if there's any corporations out there that want to get behind what work we're doing here, that would be great. And then also in November, we're going to be doing a theme surrounding around the Indigenous Peoples Day, a very politically charged holiday known as Thanksgiving by most of us. And again, if you have storytellers that can fit for this theme, we would love to hear from them. So I just want to thank everybody again for being here. And now what we want to do is we want to bring up all the storytellers so that you can have an opportunity to hang out with them, and you can ask questions and chat and just get to know them a little bit more. So we will have some moderation happening on any questions, but if you could please just get to know our storytellers. And again, thank you for being here. How do you guys feel?
Feel good.
Yeah.
Powerful stories to hear.
It was marvelous. I was so proud of you. You got your fan back on?
Yes. Support you guys. I was up here sweating bullets. I'm like, please.
Oh my God. You were cracking me up in your salon scene when you were like, but I couldn't smile bigger. Bride died and laid to the side.
Honey,
I literally connected with all of you guys. Seriously. The hair stuff. I mean, that's just childhood. That's now, you know, sitting in a chair for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, sometimes getting my hair braided, you know, having boobs in your face constantly. You need to like sit still and then getting that smack on the head, like, stop moving around. What's wrong with you?
You guys might not know it now because my hair's short, but I used to have to sit in the chair too. I had a big old afro that my mom would braid. She'd spend like hours and hours.
Oh my
It
God.
was really
That's
big.
my son. That's my son right now. I twist his hair. Or, I braid it. He doesn't allow me to braid it anymore because he says I braid it too tightly.
I've been in a couple chairs that it's way too tight. Like, not necessary.
Headache. Mm-mm.
I know.
I always wondered about the people when you're braiding. Do they get tired? Do your hands must get so tired.
I'm
No,
sure.
They have this like special cocaine mixture that they use in their wrists so they can go all day when they're braiding.
Oh my God.
I have a question.
The secret's revealed.
I have a question for Stephanie.
Yeah.
When did you when you started wearing your hair more natural? What kind of response did you get from just people?
Yeah, it's interesting because I got variants of responses. I went through regular locks when I lived in Chicago about 10 years ago, and people loved it. I went to a predominantly all-black church, so that was mainly the community that I kind of hung out with. I think that when I went natural here in LA, that's more of a melting pot of people, is where I got a little more, I started to think about it in the background, like when I'm going on interviews.
Interesting.
How do I have to do my hair in the morning? And honestly, I'm bored now with my hair, just to be quite honest. But the thought process of having to do my hair in the morning, it's just like,
Yeah.
this thing, just like this.
I only asked because when I didn't start wearing my hair, it's straightened right now, whatever. But I didn't start wearing it naturally curly until probably like a few years ago because I didn't like it. And then I guess getting into the acting industry, people are starting to want the natural look. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna wear my natural hair. And I got like a lot of praise from it. And then one time I walked into a convenience store, and my husband and I would always go into this little store on the end of the block to get like snacks. And this guy who I had seen before with my straightened hair, I came in with my curly hair and he was like, what did you do to your hair? And I was like, oh, it's natural today. It was straightened before. He goes, oh, well, you should straighten it all the time. That like hurt.
Yeah. It's funny when people are like, it's not funny, but it's interesting when people are like, oh my God, your hair is so pretty.
Yeah.
It's natural to you because you created this space of it not being natural for us or in this world. So when you come up and touch my hair because you think it's pretty, well, first of all, don't touch my hair, number one.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, have you guys had it so that, people will just randomly come up to you and start touching your hair? Because I have it happen all the time.
Don't touch my hair.
So you all, we have a question from the audience, from Holly, and she asks, what inspired you to share your story? It's a very brave thing to do.
Is that to everyone?
Yeah. So Harjas, we'll start with you since we're just going to do the Hollywood Square thing.
Sure thing. Yeah. For me, I think there is not a lot of representation of Sikhs in the media in general. Fortunately now there's a lot more brown or Indian representation. There's people that you could name by name, but the thing that I mentioned about, there's a section of people who are really vocal. So somebody will misconceive me as someone else and then say things which would take the form of verbal abuse. But even when people don't say something, it's not like they look at me and they recognize who I am. And Sikhism, by definition, is a very visible religion. Like, you see a man with a turban and a beard, you're like, okay, in a sea of people, you will be able to point the person with a turban on. So I feel like, which is why I say in my story, when you're born to stand out, why try and blend in? So that's kind of the reason why for me is it's one is representing. This is something my grandfather told me before I came to America. He said, when you go to America, you're not just representing yourself, but you're representing the entire Sikh faith. Because when someone looks at you, they're making an opinion about who you are, what you do, and what your people or community might be like. So that's a huge reason why I chose to share my story.
Very powerful. Wow. Thank you. Christina, what inspired you?
Well, as you all know, I live in Puerto Rico. You can, I don't know if you can hear the tree frog singing, but, uh, and so we've gone through a lot in the past couple of years with earthquakes and hurricanes and corruption in the government. But um, the protests that are happening in the U.S. Are spilling over to the Afro Latino community here in Puerto Rico as well. As I mentioned in my story, there's this idea that you're a Puerto Rican, so you can't be Black and Puerto Rican at the same time, which is false. Um, we're multifaceted beings, even like this um, this idea that all Puerto Ricans are a mixture of Black, Indigenous, and Spanish people. So we're this beautiful soup concoction of culture. And but when it comes to talking about the impacts of colorism, which uh, is how uh, the discrimination and the violence of racism manifest within communities of color. It's colorism, like there is a grading scale, and the light and the light benefits you have. But in Puerto Rico, because of our history of colonialism and being invaded by the U.S. and being under the U.S. government and not being able to make our own decisions as a country, um, we fade into this idea of we have to be together under this big umbrella that is Puerto Rican. And so we lift up, like the three cultures, we lift up the pride of the indigenous by saying we're Boricuas, which is the native name of the island. But when it comes to the Black aspect of our history, it's very selective. And when I say there is racism in Puerto Rico, people look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, "What are you talking about? We have all the colors. Everyone loves each other." And I'm like, "Yeah, but what about?" I can name like 10 things that people say and do that they've internalized that are direct, like pokes at prejudice and 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 putting the darker Latinos at a disadvantage. And I think about, sorry if this is too long, but I think about like even Black people in Mexico, like they're not seen as Mexican because they're Black. And so it hurts me, it breaks my heart to think that in the Latin American context, and by Latin America I mean like all the Americas, there is this back and forth, the struggle to identify as more than just your national identity, but to have more than one identity. So that's why I wanted to share this story.
And I thought your story illustrated that really, really well. Thank you. Okay. Devan, what inspired you? This story you've told before.
Yeah, the last week was when we did it together. 2 weeks ago was the first time I told it, but I've been inspired. I've been inspired to dig up all the moments of racism that's within me, that's been controlling me. When I was 6 years old, my mom's youngest brother was shot and killed by the police on the front lawn of my grandparents' home. And the way that manifested itself in my family is nobody really talked about it, and he kind of was just forgotten and erased. And I learned to repress stories in the same way that I saw that happened. And through all my life, I had a lot of moments of racism that occurred, and I just buried them inside and thought I was fine. And then I just realized, as I have a son of my own, or sons of my own, that actually they have been kind of controlling me. And so I've been trying to get them out of me and to not think that healing is the same as hiding. Yeah.
Wow, big difference. Yeah. Well, storytelling can be extremely cathartic and therapeutic, and you're putting it in an art form. So I'm sure it's painful, but your story is very powerful.
Thank you.
So thank you. All right. Stephanie B., what inspired you?
Yeah. So there are a few moments actually that inspired me. One actually before we met, I said, "Okay, God, I really need to learn how to storytell."
Oh,
Put down a list of things to do, and then we met, and then you connected with me. So I was like, "Okay, God, I hear you." So that was
so I'm a gift from God, is what you're saying.
yes, exactly. Compliment. Thank you very much. Just want you to know that.
You didn't tell me that before. I didn't know that.
Surprise.
That's wild.
Yeah. I would also say in terms of the question where it says it's a brave thing to do, how you mentioned it's a brave thing to do. There's over this quarantine, I have been networking with a lot of people, and one of the guys that I networked with said to me or asked me this question: "How many times that you recall have you lived this life?" And when he asked me, I was like, "Is this a trick question?" Once? And he said, "Okay, so if you only live this life once, who really has the answer?" Right? And so when he said that to me, I thought the whole concept of bravery, like I can never be wrong about anything, right? In terms of sharing my story, I didn't have that feeling there of fear in terms of fitting in or feeling like I needed to be brave, because after him telling me that, asking me that question, it made me feel like I am here for a purpose and I have something to share. And so didn't
Yeah.
feel brave for me. It felt like I'm here in this moment for that particular reason. But I would say also the last thing is that there have been moments in my life where I have experienced
Excuse me.
questions. I've experienced racism, not knowing that it was racism. And there is a moment that occurred that essentially drove me to be insanely curious about racism and my own biases. And that led me to do research on my own history, which led me to, I was like, well, am I like hating my own if I lock my car door when somebody walks by me? You know, like, and am I looking at my own in any type of way because of the content that's programmed to me from a marketing perspective? So there are a number of moments that came together that cultivated me wanting to share this story. The main one was that you sent to me by God. But thank you.
Yeah, you'd not told me that part. And I think that's something too for me. Like when we've been watching everything, I personally started digging in on my own soul and my own like upbringing and racism and what was there and what wasn't. And we've all gone through it or fought through it in our own family upbringing. So that 14-year-old girl that is brought up by Christina, and you were kind of in the Midwest. I was like, yeah, there's a lot of pressure on there on how to think that nature versus nurture side of racist upbringings. So anyways, thank you. Jasmine, what
So for
inspired you?
me, because I was full-fledged in the entertainment industry, and then when I joined the police force, I kind of dropped off the face of the planet pretty much. So after my whole journey, after I decided to resign, that's when everything started happening with George Floyd, and sort of just, kind of an outbreak of anger from the world. And I started to feel like really ashamed of the profession I was in, because I didn't even want to tell anyone, like, well, I was a cop, like, don't kill me. Because people are so angry, and understandably. And
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of started seeing a lot of hurtful things on social media, and I totally am behind, you know, holding officers accountable who do unjustifiable things. But then there's other people who just
Yeah.
say hurtful stuff about any cops in general. And
Yeah.
I had a long talk with a lot of people in my agency that I worked with, and just hearing their stories, how some of them don't even take their police cars home because they don't want people to know, because their cars have been vandalized or they've gotten death threats, you know, put on their door. And it's like, you know, this is a profession that I worked really hard in, and it was hard to do. And I was like, I want to be proud of this because I joined it for the right reasons, you know. And so I wanted to share my story just to kind of remind people, like, you know, hey, just remember that there's also cops out there like me who are trying to do the right thing. You know, like, looking back on all the stuff I did, like, I was like, wait a second, I can't be ashamed of this profession. Like, I answered so many domestic violence calls. I interviewed rape victims. I wrote reports that brought so many abusive husbands to justice. And I'm proud of that. And I just want people to remember, like, we're not all the enemy.
Right. Well, that's why I really loved your story too, because I think it does bring balance, because we're trying to seek what is the balance, you know, in all of this. I have a good friend who was a retired police officer and a former Seahawk. And he told me, I go, was there a moment you wanted to quit? And he said, yeah, when I was a rookie, and in 1 week I was on my 9th DOA. Yeah. And it turns out that he thinks this guy's dead, and he's not, and because he had to bang on the door so much, and the guy finally like wakes up, he'd passed out or something, and he's like, good, now I don't have to quit. He was right there on the fringe.
It can become really disheartening. And so I just wanted people to remember that, you know, it's a hard job, and just to kind of be gracious to those cops that you do see who are just trying to do it the right way.
Yeah. There is one more question for you though. Did law enforcement ever thought something about having to face veterans among the crowd, considering how they are elevated in U.S. culture? Oh, so we're to Abby. That's to Abby.
Abby.
Yeah. Sorry. So what inspired you to answer this question, please?
Yeah, sure. So it was crazy because you know, I did intelligence when I was in the Navy, and you know, doing that and kind of like ingrains in you that no matter what, and just as a, you know, person of color, you know, you have to literally document everything that you're doing, because no one will believe you, right? And after the first protest, you know, I would get home and I would see so many people saying that, oh, Seattle is like this wild place, and you know, there's savages running around with guns and all of this, and I'm like, are you kidding me? They're like literally barbecuing shish kebab on the street corner, because like that's how peaceful it was, you know. And so getting a chance to like document everything, and it's actually been very helpful, especially for all the law cases, you know, that we've pretty much been going through. I'm literally in 2 law
you went
cases
to court, right? And won.
Yeah,
you got a restraining order on him.
Yeah, and honestly, like, you know, what Jasmine was saying, you know, we realized that there were some police officers that were there that we were walking by, and they were like, they were very respectful. You know, they were trying to make sure that we were being safe, you know, compared to some other ones who were just like, okay, we're just gonna, you know, throw tear gas into the crowd, right? So there's tons of bottles. You literally see bottles being thrown into the air, and I'm recording all of it because it's important, right? Because the news was literally portraying it as something completely different. And so, you know, I felt like, coming from a culture of storytellers, it was really important to, you know, talk about that story and my motivations even for going into the military too. You know, a lot of my friends know me as this very jovial jokester, kind of person. And so here's a chance to see my serious side.
Warrior. You're
Yeah.
a warrior.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, watching your videos, because you had quite a few to select, but they were bone chilling. I mean, when their hands went up and said, "Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot," and then they started shooting.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it wasn't, what killed me is that, it was the fact that there was no delineation between, those people who were rioting, right, and those people who were trying to be peaceful.
Right.
For the Westlake event, there was no rioting until the protesters left. Right. So all of those people that were there, they were not there in support of the protest. They were there because they wanted to cause damage, cause chaos. And that's not what we were trying to do. We were trying to spread a message of peace, so that people understood that we were sick and tired of seeing our people or people that we cared about dying on video now. Finally, it's 400 years and we finally get to this place where we can, say something about it. So,
well, the smartphone, the camera on this phone is the number one weapon that we have. I mean, with Rodney King, it started with the first viral video. I don't know if it was on a camera, but this is a very important. So I'm glad you don't have a dumb phone anymore, Devan. And I hope you never have to use it in that format, but okay.
There's also, I wanted to say, there's also apps out there too for people who are in situations where they don't feel safe. You can download it on your phone. I forgot what the name of it is, but you can literally
Citizen?
Yeah, there's one called Citizen and there's another one too. And you can literally program macros in there so that if you get pulled over and you're worried, then you can literally say Siri or, Android, blah, 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 blah. But to answer the question that Elvin was asking about veterans, veterans are obviously held in very high regard in the United States, right? We get a whole day to us, right? And we get a day for those who have fallen that, we celebrate every single year. But I honestly, I don't know what the mentality was. I can't speak to that. I can't speak to, because the group of friends that I was with, there was another guy that was an Army veteran, and he saw way more frontline, combat than I did. I was a human interrogator, so I was in a nice air conditioned room, and I got to talk to really bad people.
Good cop, bad cop kind of stuff.
Lots of good cop, bad cop. My nickname was the ex-girlfriend, so it was great. But yeah, I can't speak to the mentality of, those police officers that were out there, at the time. I just know that, we took it as a situation that, we needed to do everything that we could to protect the people that we were with, because some of them had never been in situations like that before. So I kind of had to get over my own fears and my own blatant PTSD, that I got from being deployed, and try to take care of my friends. I mean, I would even get messages from my son like, "Stop streaming, you're gonna get in trouble," and I'm just like, "Oh crap." He's like, "We're gonna have a conversation when you get home," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm in trouble." So
didn't Mr. Rogers, I know, but didn't he say when there's tragedy, watch for the helpers, they go running in?
Absolutely.
That's you. So,
thank you.
All right. I think we can close our show, our first show. You guys, thank you again. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to sponsors, and still to Brianna. She's still flying the plane. Yes. So we will see you in October. And again, if you know people that would be interested in being a storyteller, or anyone in the corporate sponsorship that would like to get involved, we'd be more than happy and thrilled to talk to them. So I'm going to sign off again. I'm Melissa Reaves, and this is Melanin Stories Matter, and they do. So, and this is my cat. He just jumped up. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Everyone.